Hello.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Emancipated Citizen Podcast, where we bring to you some of the stories of the bravest men and women out there fighting for their freedoms, for their individuality against authoritarianism, and bring some of their very unique stories to us and to you. My name is Zachal Reyes. With me is Benjamin Snow.
Hello, everyone.
Today, hi Ben. So you contacted Carlos recently to talk to us about something that is very relevant right now on multiple fronts, right? So for one thing, of course, I'm sure everybody listening knows about the invasion of Venezuela that recently happened, and in conjunction with that, of course, the monstrous dehumanization of immigrants and especially Latin Americans in the United States under Trump and during the Trump era, which has lasted for a very long time. So yeah, Carlos, we're very happy to have you on the show. Carlos is an immigrant from Venezuela, living in the United States, and yeah, we're very happy to have the opportunity to talk to you about this and learn more about the topic.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I guess first things first. Do you want to start with the history of Venezuela or your personal history?
I can do a little bit of both. I came to the US when I was 6, so I didn't go through like the education system in Venezuela to know all the history by hand, to be honest. I know like Simon Bolivar independence, and they used so Simon Bolivar being like our like independence figure, and he's very like promoted culturally as this figure of independence, leading the Venezuelan people and technically like Colombia, Ecuador as the Colombia, separating from Spain, um, has in the 20th century became, throughout the history, but like as like the end of the 20th became this like cultural figure, which the Chavez administration and like the rising, like Chavez, like Bolivarian revolution, they called it the Bolivarian Revolution, to give the Venezuelan people that like spirit of nostalgia, and to use the figure of Simon Bolivar to like catapult his interests in that way, co-opting like leftist rhetoric to rile people up and to get this revolution to occur, against capitalist interests, global capitalist interests in oil. In the 20th century, Venezuela was one of the richest, or at a couple decades, the richest country on earth, based on its oil reserves and the deals it had with Western oil interests and U.S. oil interests. Um, uh, Venezuela based a lot of or pretty much its entire economy on oil because it was uh, becoming so wealthy, based on oil. They did not create a lot of different economic sectors to stabilize the economy. So every time uh, the price of oil and stuff went up, Venezuela was wealthy, and then like the economy just being very volatile based on um, the like what oil was valued at globally. So at certain
Yeah.
dipping points in the 80s, there was a lot of like income inequality with Venezuela, which caused like a mass revolt against capitalism. And here comes Chavez giving this these like really big speeches, and just like being able to give people a voice, and saying that socialism is the answer. We're going to break away from they call the U.S. the empire. So break away from the empire, and we're going to do this. We're going to nationalize our oil. We're going to become, independent in within this like global structure, and we have so much oil that it should work for us.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
we can just wind back a little bit on, you mentioned Simon Bolivar, and and the history of Latin American independence. Would you like to just elaborate a little bit to contextualize that reference for anyone who might not be familiar with it?
Sure, yeah. So back to Simon Bolivar. At the time when
Which time?
so Venice,
Which
go
time
ahead.
was them? Which time was them?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So like very early 1800s, uh,
Mhm.
late 1700s, early 1800s. Venezuela was inspired by the U.S. Revolution directly to break away from Spain's rule. And then just like, again contextualizing that at the time, like it was El Gran Colombia, the Great Colombia, which was um, several South American countries, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador. I feel like I'm missing one. I apologize for for
Peru.
that.
And so
Peru,
so
probably, yes.
they were under Spanish rule. Yeah.
Yeah, they were under Spanish rule. So then, when they were able to uh, liberate themselves from Spanish rule, they were still El Gran Colombia. There's a little bit of history there where they like decided to break away into separate governing states, um, which I don't know off the top of my head all that right now. Also, just history that I picked up here and there. Like I said, I grew up in the U.S., so like I know like in depth a lot more like U.S. history than like all those like ins and outs of Venezuelan history itself. But you pick
Yeah,
up things here
for
and there.
for our listeners who want to get a comprehensive history of Simon Bolivar, the Revolutions podcast did a very excellent series about it. I recommend it.
I mean, I think it's enough to kind of contextualize um, the general historical political situation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And just a note on the side on this, but I think it's kind of reminiscent of a lot of things I have um, heard around the Philippines, right? Considering or talking specifically about the liberation from Spanish colonialism and a period of time where people really looked up to the United States and their revolutionary history, or as it has been seen by many, only to then be colonized by the Americans, right? And massively exploited. It's
Right,
a
right.
it's a story that repeats itself
Yeah.
in history,
Yeah.
and
But unlike the Philippines, Venezuela never was like a formal U.S. territory other than
sure.
Puerto Rico. I wish we could have a good neighborly relationships in the Americas.
I mean,
I
it's
wish
the
we
Sure.
whole
could do
the
that.
Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah, and I
Monroe
mean,
Doctrine, right?
yeah, yeah, and I mean, the Monroe Doctrine was originally we're our own hemisphere. European colonizers can leave us all alone, but it couldn't stay like that. We couldn't keep the tell Europeans with ideas about how the Americas should operate to go screw themselves. Couldn't just stick to that.
Right, because
This is kind of
who was dominating the U.S. already was Europeans. It's like
Yeah,
they're like, don't mess with this, and then like the U.S. is like Europe, like
yeah,
being able to expand within the U.S. or within the Western Hemisphere anyway.
yeah,
this is kind of the tragic cycle of anti-colonialism, right? You have um, you have one colonial power or some other autocracy. Um, People rise up against it. Oftentimes, there is help from the outside, right? The great powers take disproportionate influence. They become the oppressors.
Hmm.
You have a liberator, and the cycle kind of repeats itself.
yeah. Yeah, and
Hmm.
the irony of Russia and Iran calling themselves anti-colonialists now should be lost on no one.
And of course, the latest iteration of this right now is, of course, the overthrow of the Chavez regime and basically the installation of an American puppet government, even though it is the same government, but the White House is pulling the strings now.
I think I think what's going on also is a shift between, so it's always been a facade. It's a shift from like Russian and China interests in Venezuela to just subverting it to now it's just US interests. And it's the same government, but it's just like, it's always been a little bit of a facade there with like Chavez, like the proper Chavez government being like very like pro Russia, pro China, pro Iran, pro Cuba, North Korea, and then now it's technically the same government, but they've like taken like, well, I mean, because you know that kind of corruption just goes one way or the other. So they just flip the coin. They're like, well, I guess it's just better right now for us to bend the knee for the U.S.
Yeah, and realistically, like Trump acts a lot like. Everything okay there?
Yeah, his headphones got disconnected.
My headphones died, but it's okay.
All right.
You can still hear me. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I still hear you fine. But yeah, and realistically, Trump acts an awful lot like Putin. He is completely transactional, and he will change his mind like the wind. So it's and well, the U.S. is now capturing Russian ghost fleet ships off Venezuela. Apparently, a lot of the oil in some of those tankers has been sold and the money deposited in the UAE. There's definitely something going on there, and I'm sure we're going to find out what it is in the worst way in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, this has been going on for a couple decades where Venezuela just gifts oil to Russia and China and, like, I guess whoever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, not whoever, but, like,
yeah.
Definitely Cuba.
There was a long trade of Venezuela and now Mexico sending oil to Cuba, then Cuba sending doctors to Venezuela and Mexico.
Right.
Now that the Venezuelan oil is cut off, it's just Mexico. And yes, I am in favor of poor Mexicans getting health care. It's a little horrifying when there's doctors being voluntold they're going to treat people in dangerous areas in Mexico. It sounds a little too much like slavery to me.
I don't know to which degree those doctors are not coerced into doing that. I think that's something of a different topic. So earlier this year, an American special forces operation just took the president of Venezuela from his residence and brought him to a U.S. prison, as far as I understand. Yeah. And his vice president was basically installed as the president there, and is, by all appearances, taking orders directly from the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Even like a few months earlier, Donald Trump has been campaigning like nobody has ever before to win the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even going so far as to make threats, veiled threats against Norway and Europe, pertaining to this topic that he must win the Nobel Prize at any cost. The Nobel Peace Prize, of course, did not go to him. It instead went to a Venezuelan opposition leader before the invasion, named Maria Mercado. Right? As Mercado received the Nobel Prize, she immediately made a show of dedicating it to Donald Trump and his commitment to global peace. And of course, after he invaded her country, she personally went to the White House to hand him her Nobel Prize, upon which the Nobel Prize Committee issued an unprecedented statement, actually two different statements, that the Nobel Peace Prize is non-transferable. We've talked about this character before. You have had some rather unkind things to say about her, which I think I share your sentiment as far as this individual presenting herself as a complete clown. Something of a Donald Trump of Venezuela. I mean, the whole charade with the Nobel Prize should be indicative enough of that. And I think, I mean, just on this point, if Donald Trump was ever right about anything, when he said, yeah, Norway and the Nobel Peace Committee should be must be really embarrassed right now about their decisions. He was absolutely right. That was, that took away credibility from them in a way that I don't think. Well, there have been some pretty bad prizes given out in history. Let's not go through that right now, but that was pretty bad. So tell us a little bit about Maria Mercado and also the, okay, you're not a geopolitical expert as far as I understand, but if you have any insight pertaining to why Trump has been treating her so dismissively, considering the fact that he is really working on installing a puppet regime, why she wouldn't actually be the perfect candidate for that. So talk to us about Maria Mercado.
So. Yeah, I will say really quick, not like that she reserves respect either way, but her name's Machado, not Mercado. Mercado means market. Yeah, Maria Corina Machado. So back to, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. She's groveling. She's been she's at his feet trying to do she gifted him the Nobel Peace Prize that she was given and this whole thing. But yeah, she's part of this legacy of elite families in Venezuela. So it's she's she checks off a lot of boxes to be the perfect candidate to be that puppet regime person. I think that she was used in a certain way, and then the Venezuelan people they voted for the guy's name was Edmundo because in the last election she was running against Maduro, and the Maduro regime decided that she couldn't be the candidate. So they put up a guy that would represent her to be the candidate. There's this whole thing. And Venezuelans around the world voted, and the consensus was that that they had won. The opposition had won. And a lot of the the ballots and all that, they were supposed to have these receipts, but they weren't coming up with them of the count of the votes and all that stuff. So the conclusion was that the opposition had won because the regime wasn't coming up with all these the numbers that would prove that they had won. They had just declared the win. So it went into this whole public chaos and all this stuff, just protests on the street, burning down Maduro stuff. And at this time it was the rise of Maria Corina's image, my dad, being very opposition to Maduro, even made his profile picture a picture of her. She had become this figure of let's get Maduro out of there, she's gonna be the guy or the person. And then I'm thinking now back to like the Guaido guy, like a few years ago that had like, won or whatever. And like the US had declared that he had won as well. But it's her now. And again, like she like checks off all those boxes. But when it came time to, okay, Maduro is taken, who is taking over Venezuela? And she's like, I'm ready. And she's like, now groveling at Trump's feet and all this stuff, giving him the prize. And he doesn't care. He wants to just like be in full control of Venezuela. I think that he knows that if he were to give the power like to her, or like, give her that like, okay, she's the leader of the country, she isn't going to necessarily be the puppet that he wants. She's voiced certain things, which like the Venezuelan people across the world have agreed with. And then like she's not like fully fitting in his pocket. I think that's the back and forth there. She's tried her best here and there. She's, for some years, asked the U.S. to invade Venezuela, like literally, like asked the U.S. to free Venezuela from, to invade. But a lot of the Venezuelan people in consensus, like, have wanted change, but not in like direct, like, confrontation with the U.S. Like they want to free themselves. But, global interests say like, okay, the U.S. should invade and, give oil rights back to all these companies and all that. But again, yeah, I mean, she's a clown just because like, like I said, groveling. And then at the end of the day, there was nothing like agreed upon. Like she's like, here's the Nobel Peace Prize, and expecting something back when like Trump is Trump. Like there's incompetence and there's corruption. So both of those things together is like maybe he could have got what he wanted from there, but he can't like make up his mind. And I think just Marco Rubio being there too to, ease all the things in, to just not giving Venezuela like sovereignty at this point, I think is their goal, to have full control of those like immense oil fields.
Two very concerning observations about that. First of all, it seems that what you're describing is basically that the current government, which was basically the same government under Maduro, is basically under more pressure, and the Trump administration has more leverage over them than they would over somebody who might be able to act in some capacity of independent legitimacy, right? So you always have this move in your back pocket in case the current government is cooperative enough that you install somebody else. But another like a related observation here that is also very concerning, considering the United States' supposed commitment to democracy across the world. I know we talked a lot of shit about Machado, but as far as democratic legitimacy goes, she probably had, or her party at least, has the best claim that there is democratically than any other entity out there. And the fact that the American government is prioritizing this direct leverage over even the thin kind of appearance of democratic legitimacy should be very concerning, because, of course, for a long time, a lot has been happening behind the scenes while American leaders have been like talking their commitment to global democracy up. Now, it's you don't even have that lip service. It's not
right.
It's not even an ideal worth aspiring towards. So I think we're definitely moving in the wrong direction in a very, very scary way. as
Right.
far as that goes.
Yeah, I mean, for both the like Maduro regime and then for like the opposition, I think a lot of Americans can relate to like the better evil. It's like picking the like. There's two. Which one's gonna be like a little less bad? And Venezuelans have like for decades now experienced authoritarian like violence against them, economic and all this. Of course, some of it has to do with CIA intervention and all of that, but there is the corruption, and there is just fully disappearing people that are public like dissidents of the regime. So they have that trauma, and just like begging for change. So they're at this point has become like celebration in the face of the invasion and like the capture of Maduro, but also uncertainty in that sense. So like in my perspective, like I like take your time, like celebrate what needs to be celebrated because of the trauma experienced, but there's still kind of that like which one is the better of two evils, because at this point like you've experienced this one, but what is to come?
Yeah. So Carlos,
and do we want to cover the whole military situation here too, because it has ripple effects that are huge.
What do you mean?
Before the actual operation inside of Venezuela, when Trump was ordered attacks on air quotes drug shipments, which you can't tell what's in a little boat from with the drone in the sky above it. You just can't see what's in it. And you just respond with dropping missiles on it. Although the U.S. Coast Guard is very good at boarding little boats and seeing what's on them. But no, just drop missiles on them from the sky, which probably actually costs more money. And one of the major officials then said he would be afraid to be fishing off the coast of Venezuela. It almost sounds like they knew they were killing fishermen. So that is extremely bad. That is going to that'll have second and third order effects that will bite everyone in the future. Aside from being a war crime.
I think it goes into like inciting like them accepting that it's like an act of war. So like if they were to like retaliate, it gives them an excuse to fully invade. I think that's what they were trying. That's what the Trump regime has been trying with like ICE all over the country, with like let's try to pick a fight, let's try to like, it's like dropping like a little like an incentive for an uprising, just so that they have an excuse for a military state. So like same with over there, like, oh, let's do these bombing innocent civilians off the coast and see if these countries retaliate, and that gives us an excuse to do what we want, pretty much. And they didn't take the bait is the thing. So, and again, they're just doing what they want anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think Trump actually wants a full American boots on the ground in Venezuela for a long period of time. That's just he starts looking at the money it costs and gets upset about spending money on such things. And ultimately, that's just putting American soldiers where they can be attacked. And I mean, he has no consistency. But his Tulsi Gabbard, her big problem with the U.S. intervening in the Middle East was that American soldiers were then killed in it. And she'd probably have the same objection to having U.S. soldiers in Venezuela, too, pretty quickly.
Right.
I think my one observation that I have about the events that you just mentioned is the very clear shift in United States politics. In basically, people are being demonized and dehumanized in a way that we have not seen in recent history.
Correct, right.
And any hostility that might be directed towards the Maduro regime or political adversaries or, even complex and difficult to deal with domestic issues like badly formulated and enforced immigration laws. Kind of all of those, every concern that those people have is approached in a manner that is deeply misanthropic and well,
Yep.
yeah. So the Maduro regime is bad. All Venezuelans, they should be scared, right? And to some degree, we've seen this like back in the Bush era as well, about destroying Middle Eastern countries and converting them to Christianity, or whoever said that, I don't know.
And Coulter.
And Coulter, yes. But I mean, I think it's worth taking a moment to just think about how far we have gone since then. That even somebody like Ann Coulter today, or at least a couple of years ago, was speaking about just how far this current administration is going in terms of how hard they're pushing with this misanthropic kind of attitudes toward different political interests.
For sure.
So yeah, we have gone a long way in the wrong direction, of course, and I would like to take this as an opportunity to talk about the lived experiences of Venezuelans, especially ones that have gone to the United States and have fled their countries. Right. I do want to talk about stories of flight, why people leave Venezuela, why they take those dangerous journeys, why they want to go to the United States, and so on. So put a pin in that. Before that, I would like you to talk about your personal experiences after this most recent invasion of Venezuela. Of course, the Maduro government is extremely unpopular, right?
Yep.
Venezuelans have been terrorized by the Maduro government for a long time, and when a person who has been dehumanizing those communities, and having a very animistic attitude towards democracy, right, is getting involved and removing this person from power and taking the reins himself and controlling the country's natural resources. There are a lot of mixed feelings that a lot of people have, right? Would you like to talk about your experience with that, or other people's experience with that? But
yeah,
how this kind of thing kind of meets the community.
I think it would make sense for me to give a little context on like the flight part first that you mentioned, and then like go into now.
Sure.
Just because like given my story, so in or very early 2000s, a lot of Venezuelans who Chavez had convinced and voted for him were kind of like coming to the realization that like he wasn't gonna be really in their best interest, actually. So a big petition came out, nationwide in Venezuela to impeach Chavez, to force him out of power after he had already like come back from, they had put him in jail, and then he like rose back up and like was in charge of the country again and all this stuff. So this petition was out, and which my dad signed. At the time, he was just, a taxi driver in Caracas. So instead of the petition like leading to more action to remove Chavez, it actually became like a national blacklist for most of the people on that list to not be able to find employment. So my dad became unemployable. So in the country, so again, just like these tactics of kind of like economic terrorism in that way, specifically to people. So my family fled and came to the U.S. This was now too that we had been able to like settle into the U.S. So there's that perspective on the family, like like a direct impact, and having to leave. And then so then I grew up in the U.S. I'm gonna kind of skip through that for now. To now, like, you know, so many people have like experienced high crime rates in Venezuela due to like economic instability and like the whole blacklist. So I'll like skip now to you know, decades of like authoritarian like violence and all that, like under like all these like pseudo like rhetoric, like leftists, like a lot of leftists globally had been supporting the Chavez regime, and many people fled. Venezuela has like a huge diaspora all over the country or all over the world, and like, you know, culminating now to the, you know, the removal of Maduro. So we're now at like, you know, Maduro was taken, and most of the Venezuelan population globally that had fled Venezuela is celebrating celebrations, and knowing that, like, you know, their idea was it's gonna like come to a change, like Venezuela's gonna like finally see the change that we've been waiting for. And then again, like back to, like I said, that my dad like had recently, his profile picture was Maria Corina, and then I forget if he's changed it like presently, because it's been a couple, you know, like a full almost 2 months, month and a half, I don't know, since like Maduro was taken. But he also, like my dad, like he made his profile picture like Maduro arrested, like that picture of him like outside, like with the DEA at his sides, and he's like arrested. Because my dad, you know, like being impacted by all this, like at the time, he sees the opposition and like this U.S. invasion as like key to like freedom for Venezuela. As many people do, like around the world, Venezuelans, and like a lot of my cousins that live in Mexico, cousins that live in Europe. I have cousins that live in Chile. All of them faced trauma within the Chavez administration, were able to leave, and they see this as like the light, you know, at the end of the tunnel. Like the U.S. has come in and is the hero. Of course, there's a lot of like uncertainty in people who like see kind of like the layers to it, with like what is the history of like whenever the U.S. like decides to do a regime change, and what has been the outcome of that. And we're still kind of in this like, you know, middle zone of like figuring out what's happening, because suddenly, like we said, like the same like vice president has like, you know, is technically in charge of the country now, but is bending the knee to the Trump regime or Trump's demands, and seeing kind of where like geopolitically, like what is their best interest right now. And the fact that the U.S. government or the U.S. military was so easily able to take Maduro, they've decided that that's probably better than, you know, their relations with Russia and China at this time.
Yeah, there's one other important note about that. Because it was so easy, and because Venezuela has had a lot of corruption issues, like almost any country dependent on natural resource money, in fact, except for Norway, there's a very good chance that that high-level insiders were taking money from the CIA to inform and give the information. And an important detail about that, Venezuela's air defenses were Russian missile launchers and Chinese radar, and apparently they weren't connected, so they didn't work. It could be that it's corrupt people taking shortcuts and not doing their work, or it could be that they were paid not to connect them, so the air defenses were useless. And this will have effect, and that in Iran and Israel just running over Iranian airspace is going to mean people think making these decisions in the future will think that they don't have to worry about Russian air defenses. We won't know if that's true. until there's F-22s over Russian air defenses, and then we'll find out exactly how well our stealth works against actual Russian equipment.
Right.
Personally,
Right.
I don't want to be in one of those cockpits.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And might mean that Russia just doesn't want to risk it and just throws their nukes as soon as they're afraid.
Okay, so you talked a lot about the happiness that Venezuelans, especially in diaspora, have experienced within that, and especially, you mentioned your father and his story as a taxi driver. Did he support Chavez initially?
Yes, many people. Yeah. You could say a mass amount of the Venezuelan population supported Chavez in the beginning. Maybe the small this is how like it was they easily were convinced, because like the only people that opposed him at the time were like the small elite who controlled a lot of, you know, the Venezuelan economy and the flow of oil. So it was easy for him to kind of give that story of like co-opting leftist rhetoric of, you know, we are the people, el pueblo, and da da da, and like and summoning the idea of Simon Bolivar. He is like he pretty much was like, I am the modern Simon Bolivar. Follow me to, you know, to liberty, pretty much.
Can you tell us why? Can you tell us why? What moved people to support Chavez? And what do you think maybe he was right about that kind of moved people?
Yeah,
because
so
there must be some
economic
substance if it moves.
Totally,
the people of Venezuela.
The economic instability. Like I said before, like the rising and falling oil prices would just like wreak havoc on everyday life for people in Venezuela. So like within the 80s, many people were feeling that and understanding that, like, okay, all our oil is, you know, going to to like American company interests and all of this, like that we should see more distribution of the wealth to everyone in Venezuela, not just like the elite few or, you know, people who have like connections. So he told the truth. That's what Chavez did. He told the truth.
To be clear, most Venezuelans still want that, right?
Right.
Like sharing of the natural resources.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
and
like, the devil's in the details there when it comes to how specific governments are going to implement specific policies and which structures are more or less permeable to corruption and so on and so forth. What's happening now, of course, is that the United States is taking direct control of Venezuela's natural resources. And of course, there is this relief of getting rid of Maduro and this government, but at the same time, there is quite a bit of concern. As like I've heard about that in some circles, although to be honest, on social media right now, and I'm sure everybody has noticed that since the last presidential election in the United States, that the entire landscape has changed massively and has gone through a process of propagandization, whereby American right-wing propaganda is being seen everywhere, and of course you're flooded with those videos of like Venezuelan kind of breaking up like leftist demonstrations about hands off Venezuela, and expressing concern about the kind of control that Trump is exercising over that country, and seemingly like you have no right to speak for us, and Trump is our liberator, and so on and so forth. And of course, I'm sure some people believe that. There's some disproportionate amplification. Can you speak to that and to your experience regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting just also having the perspective of lots of people in my family celebrating, but then like I have one aunt like on my dad's side who is still very Chavista. And like I'm also close to her like a certain level. So it's tough there's that like kind of dance between like I totally understand her perspective. Like she's right about things like, okay, the US empire and like foreign interests and like all this stuff. But there's just like that little bit of, but you're turning a blind eye to Maduro, like kidnapping people off the street if they have like a different opinion or, you know, all those things. So yeah, she's very on the like, you know, release Maduro. And it's good to have like that, like kind of a personal direct perspective, like from that aunt. And then like having that both sides opinion there. But yeah, it's really just a very complicated issue, as is geopolitics, as is like corruption when somebody, you know, becomes the governing body of an entire country, especially seen it's, you know, proven that Venezuela has the largest oil resources in the world. But there's just that, like, who's going to control it? And yeah, so like for the people, again, celebrations, and then there's like people being weary of it. I think there was a point in your question right now that I'm missing. Was there something I'm missing in your current question?
Well, what I asked was basically that, okay, you talked about how your father responded to that, and he was happy about Maduro being arrested, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there is all of this propaganda going around,
Right?
And there, I have also heard about like a lot more nuance around this, because as you talked about, there were reasons why people elected Chavez into office in the first place. There were issues with American influence for a very long time. The idea that the American government is taking direct control like that. Some Venezuelans are very concerned about that as well. There have been massive demonstrations in Venezuela as well, and so on. So So just about this nuance, if you can elaborate on it further off air, you. So kind of this Venezuelan versus American leftist narrative that I think state propaganda is kind of pushing, right? That the leftists are so out of touch in kind of have taken issue with the illegal invasion of a sovereign country. But the Venezuelans, they're actually very happy about being invaded.
Right. I faced this kind of dilemma throughout my life in that context of like speaking to, because I've run in leftist circles, you know, like I've you know, here and there, or like, you know, democratic socialists of, you know, any, you know, area or whatever. But growing up and understanding like, okay, you know, capitalism, exploitation, and, you know, moving progressive to the left and all that. Several things. So like me coming up as like, okay, you know, democratic socialism, and then my parents or like my family being like, but wait, Venezuela is socialist and we like ran from them. And then there's that, and then me having to explain like, okay, the nuance of Venezuela became this because it's corrupt and it's not like, you know, tradition, like, you know, like in a sense, like what socialists actually like, you know, are trying to do. There's those levels of it. And then there's within like, you know, running in the leftist circles of like, you know, they're like hands off Venezuela and like this and that. But it's like, you don't understand, like, again, like there's the nuances, and it's like, everyone wants to think that everything's black and white, but then like within this like whole like cluster of the whole like thing is, again, back to propaganda, like who controls like the narrative on each side, because American leftists have, you know, come to the like, you know, full belief that, you know, they should support Maduro because da 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 da. at the beginning of the Chavez administration, there were ideas and like projects put in place that were, for, bettering the people and, all these social programs that kind of just fell to the wayside of corruption. But again, like American leftists believe that, hands off Venezuela and all this and that, which is fine in the sense of that the U.S. shouldn't have invaded. But again, the Venezuelan people were just begging for something to happen, and this was it. But it is tough in those moments of yes, I am a genuine Venezuelan and American leftists believing, again, a lot of these people are white and they have this whole kind of superiority, white savior complex of telling people no, you not believing the experience of the brown person who is hello, I am Venezuelan and this and this and this, and the dismissive nature that they can easily be oh, you're a CIA bot, or you are whatever, you're not oh, you fled Venezuela because your family had money and you were in direct opposition to Chavez regime only because you were part of the elite, and it's very dehumanizing in that way. They believe that
no, I have a word for these people. These people are what are often called campists, people who are in the camp of anyone against the U.S. It does not matter who, it does not matter why, they will support anyone against the U.S. and it is a form, and it is narcissistic.
Correct. Right. And in
do you think that's
they
characteristic
of... Sorry, what'd you say?
Do you think that's characteristic of the American left? And I mean, people talk about the left and a lot of context that where of course there is more diversity in opinion. I the American landscape is of course different, but speaking about the leftist party here, as far as I understand, very few people within Die Linke, for example, here in Germany, are really big fans of Maduro. But there is this concern about breaking international law and the kinds of norms that emerge because of that, and so on. Do you think there is this kind of general sentiment of dismissiveness? This, what do you want to call it, white savior complex or whatever? And of course, I also maybe to call myself out a bit, the bots and the propaganda and the fake profiles and so on. I have the impression that there are quite a lot of them. I don't have enough evidence to make a strong claim on that, but
sure.
I think once you're directing that at individuals, it becomes problematic.
Well, I was saying, it's a form of dehumanization because you're not taking our experiences as a true account, and they're giving this we know better than you because of blah blah blah, which just gives it's racist in a way because they're saying oh, we're better educated, we know the ins and outs, the intricacies of the US history and all of this and everything, but they're not listening to the people. And I mean, like I said, back to this whole blacklist, my dad was a taxi driver and you're saying that my family fled because we were elite, that doesn't make any sense.
When it comes to the nuance of this topic and the mixed feelings that some people have, you did read a post that your mother made before. Sure. Is it something that you're interested in sharing here?
Sure. Yeah. I'll continue with. I'm just gonna read this post my mom made right after Maduro was taken, because I think she has a very interesting perspective on the matter, since she's always wanted change from the Maduro administration, or the regime, but did not is not very welcoming of this, like the Trump regime taking the step to do it. So this is her words. I don't even know how to describe what I'm feeling right now. My emotions are all over the place. Did I want Maduro out of Venezuela? Yes, with every fiber of my being. Do I want Trump anywhere near controlling our future? No, never. Did Venezuelans desperately want a regime change? Yes. We've begged, marched, cried, and lost so much for it. And then she goes saying, so why is Delcy Rodriguez, who is the current VP, or the sitting president now, she was the VP for Maduro. So she says, why is Delcy Rodriguez, the regime's vice president, still in charge? That alone makes my stomach turn. This moment should feel like relief, like justice, like hope. Instead, it feels confusing, painful, and deeply unsettling. Nothing about this feels clean or honest. I hate that after everything, I'm being pushed into a place where I'm supposed to feel grateful to Trump. This isn't victory. It's complicated, heavy, and heartbreaking. And anyone who says otherwise isn't living this.
Yeah, some very powerful words there, and I think they're very, they very much cover the complexity of the situation here, right? A lot of people, they have different perspectives and happy about different things and concerned about other things, and the world is a complicated place, and we really wish the best for the future development of the people of Venezuela, for democracy and for self-determination.
Thank you. Yep.
Freedom from foreign influence, or undue foreign influence, I should say. So we can leave it there as far as the political situation in Venezuela goes. I think, at least I hope we have brought across the weight and complexity of the situation, and give you a little insight into how things are over there. Now, you and your family, as you mentioned, have fled Venezuela because your father came on a blacklist. He became unemployable, and of course, others, I'm sure you'll agree, have come with much more harrowing stories, and have
Yeah.
been
I think
been subject
my
to
family
violence
fleeing
and
was very
imprisonment.
early.
Yeah.
I'll just say really quick, my family fleeing was very early because of the blacklist. Like in 2002 we came, but facing all the economic hardship and everything that was happening after that, really huge mass exodus was around 2015. In like the and where we lived, we were really the only Venezuelan family, or like a few of our cousins. And within the last 10 years now, we're everywhere. They're, all over. And then, even in that area, like, it'll be like, oh, this person's actually Venezuelan. Oh, there's actually this Venezuelan family. But yeah, there's just kind of that distinct shift there. But yeah.
Yeah. As far as Venezuelans I've met tree planters, met college professors, and my therapist was a Venezuelan.
Nice.
So they're very widespread. They form a pretty big community in the United States. You have documented immigrants, undocumented immigrants, which are part of a scheme for systematic exploitation and going around things like labor laws. I could refer to an episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver about this specific issue and the horrible conditions that especially agricultural workers have to deal with, and the fact that they are undocumented makes it so that they are easily exploited. And it's very systemic, this issue. It's not it's not something that happens here and there. It's kind of it is a basic part of the American economy. On top of that, of course, since 2015, 2016 until now, what historians in the future are quite likely going to call the Trump era, right? People from Latin America have been like dehumanized in a way that we have not really seen in recent history, at least in that part of the world. It started with Donald Trump talking about Latin Americans as murderers and rapists. That they're sending us their worst people, and it developed into a sort of a public hysteria around Latin American gangs, MS-13, and drug smuggling and so on, which of course it is a real issue. It's also well documented, of course, that law enforcement and ICE officers have been given very very demanding tasks of rounding up a lot of people, and have been given some identifiers that were incredibly vague, that made them mistakenly identify Latin American young men as gang members, for all kinds of reasons, be it haircuts or football attire, or
tattoos,
any tattoos really, autism awareness tattoos, whatever. The stories are insane.
Competent criminals don't identify themselves with tattoos. This shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, and of course, in different parts of the United States, this has manifested to greater and lesser degrees of intensity. Very recently, 2 American citizens were murdered by ICE in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As there has been a very concerted effort to go to people's workspaces and raid people, and of course there has been quite the response from the citizenry and the residents around those places. In some parts of the United States, somebody who looks like me or you, somebody who doesn't look clearly of white Anglo-Saxon ancestry, would rightly be afraid to leave the house, right? Children are skipping school for weeks and weeks just to ensure their own safety from this hunt for foreigners, basically, right? I've had a conversation with Benjamin recently about he asked me about whether I would like to go to the United States in the near future. No, I would not. I've heard way too much from way too many people. Even German citizens who have had some pretty horrible experiences at the border, and the lawlessness.
Irish citizens, ethnically Irish people, have been detained. Yeah. The Irish foreign minister had to make a comment about it in the United Nations, which so many levels to that.
So you are an immigrant. Your family are immigrants. Probably you also know undocumented people in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to the personal experience of living through this very difficult time, being from a community that is being so intensely targeted and being dehumanized on this level? What kind of effects this has on your daily lives and the daily lives of people in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that for years, so my family had no other choice but to come over as with tourist visas, 2002 to 2005, 2005, we became, our visas expired, became technically undocumented at the time. So, part of the undocumented community, immigrant community. Luckily in 2012, Obama passed DACA, so my brother and I were able to do that. My oldest brother got married. So everything at the time was like looking up. And then within 2015, and then also like, the Trump era beginning with his like 2016 campaign, because the mass exodus from Venezuela was so huge, we became like almost like a convenient scapegoat, because now Americans who weren't really seeing as many Venezuelans were suddenly meeting a lot of Venezuelans. Like, oh, like growing up like in the early 2000s as like the one Venezuelan kid in my elementary school, it was like a fun fact. And then now it's become this like, like come on, like like eroded status because of like, there's so many of us now, and there's that fear of like, like suddenly you're all here, and like Trump's coming up with like, oh, they're all like Trena Varagua and like all this stuff. Like I said, like convenient scapegoat at the time, because like suddenly it's the Trump era and suddenly there's a lot of Venezuelans. Coming to now, and the, instability between like what's going on in Venezuela and with the US, and like obviously like, so Trump took power last January. So the, Maduro capture hadn't happened yet, but I was in the process of getting my permanent residence. Like I'd been with my partner for 5 years, and we had like finally decided like, okay, it's time. Kamala lost the election. Shit's gonna hit the fan. So we should like, do everything. And like I have my permanent residence now. And there's just like still the fear. So like, but like, pre-Trump era, even like, during Biden, having your permanent residence is a big deal. Like you have your permanent residence and you should be able to like, travel internationally if you would like to, feel safe, like flying domestically, obviously you would think. But it's living in a state of fear. And I mean, I'll say this, like I've lived in fear, of my life for my entire life because of like, the undocumented like growing up as like a child having undocumented status, but like feeling like, oh, I grew up here. Like, why am I not an American? And then like going on now 24 years in this country. Like I am, as a person growing up in Wisconsin, like I am more of a Midwest American as a person than like, can I really, I mean, I have Venezuelan heritage and like my family's Venezuelan, like, the food and the culture, but, like just living as an American for pretty much my entire life. I mean, within myself, I am more of like than I am like, can I really claim, being Venezuelan? But of course, like as an immigrant, like I'm always going to be seen as othered. So there's all of that and like all that baggage on top of just like now the ICE raids happening. So there's like the ICE raids and like, am I good? Like on paper, yes. Like I have my like status and like my legitimate marriage and like all this stuff. But I do fear like flying domestically even. Like there's moments where I'm like, am I okay to even because I don't live in Wisconsin anymore. I live with my partner. I go and visit like, my family and I'm like, am I even safe to do that? Like, am I safe to like enter? And there is the scrutiny against immigrants and like even just brown people in general, but like there's definitely like the magnifying glass on being Venezuelan and just like having that added extra like am I gonna be like specifically targeted because, you know, like my permanent resident status is like tied to like me being like I am a Venezuelan national, like I still have my Venezuelan citizenship. Is there gonna be like the what is it, like Trump was trying to like raise up the Foreign Enemies Act? I forget exactly what it's called. But say like
the Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, Alien Enemies Act. Again, another form of like using the word alien is like extremely dehumanizing. Because it like conjures like ideas in people's minds of like, oh, like, you know, out of this world. Like, what does the word alien bring up to like in people's minds? Like, you know, like someone that's like an actual like extraterrestrial, right? So like fear of like the unknown. When, you know, like again, like me being labeled an alien when I've been here since like I was 6 years old is like pretty crazy. Like I haven't been to Venezuela in 24 years, but yet like just being labeled that because of like, say I'm proud of my heritage, or like say I have like a little Venezuela flag like hanging on my mirror. Like, should I not? Like, is the police gonna like, is like ICE gonna pull me over, or like is something gonna happen just because like I'm proud of my heritage? And then just like the constant just like I'm afraid. Like I live in fear. Thankfully, like now I live in an area that's like very diverse compared to that back to like in Wisconsin. But like there's also now this like opposite of like they're targeting sanctuary cities on purpose. So like, you know, Minneapolis and like all this stuff, or like the invasion of LA was crazy. And those communities are never going to be the same. They're not the same. They're definitely not. They're, you know, the shops have closed, immigrant owned businesses. And I mean, thankfully there is, neighbors, friends, people who like with social capital, who may be white, who maybe just be who are just American citizens, who believe that they should have the right to protest this, and they've been killed in the streets of Minneapolis.
Let me ask you one question pertaining to that. Do you feel okay? So since Trump has last been elected to the presidency, and since shit has really hit the fan, as you said. That also happens to be the time in which you have had your permanent residence, right? So, have you felt more safe or less safe after the permanent residence? You know, in conjunction with the external events.
I feel it's complicated because it's like the whole thing with like the Overton wind, like the window has like shifted, right? So like 5 years ago, it
doesn't mean what it used to mean, right?
Exactly. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. If I didn't have permanent residence now, and there wasn't like a path, like a legitimate path for me, I would probably be searching for ways to like leave.
Yeah.
Not back to Venezuela, but like, can Canada accept me as an asylum seeker because of this situation? You know what I mean? Like, I'd be like digging into all that stuff with my permanent residence here, and like my family is in this country, and you know, there's so many like things, and like my partner, and we're living here. It's complicated. I mean, he wants to leave. Like my partner is actually has been like, okay, let's like figure this all out, but like, I don't know. Like we might end up like deciding that this isn't worth the constant emotional trauma. Like, what are we? You know, we've gone through this stuff. Like we've talked about it. But it's just like I mean, the U.S. has like global dominion over like so many things too.
Yeah.
Pertaining so, like, to where we flee to, and go ahead.
Pertaining to what you said about going to Canada and seeking asylum, of course, asylum is a human right, and I I myself have taken, have taken advantage of that. And I think anybody who is in danger and is being persecuted by their state or not being protected by their state has that trait. At the same time, I think it's important to caution people that it is not an easy process.
No.
And when you apply to asylum, like anywhere, like you are much more vulnerable to abuse, mistreatment, all kinds of things.
Correct.
It's a very messy process, and if there is at all any way to immigrate in a more dignified manner through means of education or work, so on, it's
100%.
It's going to be better, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Carlos.
One other thing before you leave, though, you also mentioned you're gay. I think it also is probably worth mentioning how homophobic is the Maduro and Chavez regime.
I mean, I don't know it offhand, but like Latino culture is just homophobic in general. I mean, they're not like gay marriage isn't a thing in Venezuela, and it's very yeah. I mean,
so that would be an additional reason for you not to feel safe in Venezuela, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I haven't experienced, like, my cousins have told me like just horror stories of just existing in Venezuela the last couple decades. Being queer on top of that. Yeah. I mean, there was actually there was a story of this guy he was like a hairstylist, and he was living in the US, and I think just from I think he had like a Christian tattoo. He was queer. He was sent to El Salvador. And he fled Venezuela because of fear of being gay. And just, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all that stuff. Like, I don't even it's so bad. From all the horror stories of just like the added of like being queer on top of that. Like, I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, because it's already bad.
Yeah. So of course, all of this and like the problems in Venezuela and the United States. I know this myself as a refugee. You often feel like there is no place for you, and wherever you go, you're threatened. Your very existence is threatened, and
right.
It is a very unfortunate situation, and I really hope that at least in the United States things can get better, so that undocumented people have a pathway to citizenship and documentation, and so on. I know, Carlos, that your time is limited, and I would like to wrap up the show now. But before that, I'd just like to give you the opportunity, if you would have something, or if you have something to say about the situations of undocumented people, the prospect of a pathway to citizenship. If you have something to contribute or would like to say about that, as a kind of final word here, please do go on.
I will. It's just the immigrant community has been used for, I guess, the U.S.'s entire history to build the U.S., but then at the same time be scapegoated into it's kind of like a use and toss kind of like a situation. Like first forced migration, like slavery and other things there, and then just minority populations being taken advantage of and then disposed at the same time. I think it just goes with a lot of American history of that use and kind of just the commodification of people, and then at the same time, so in the early 2000s rose up all of this anti-immigrant rhetoric on the right, calling people illegals, and then people have this whole notion that residing within the U.S. undocumented is a criminal act, which it's not. It's actually a civil offense. So it's being currently prosecuted more violently than, like, say, rape. Like, which is crazy.
One very quick clarifying question here.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just one very quick clarifying question about. So you talked about people in the 2000s, starting to use this word illegal to dehumanize people. Now, specifically using the word alien to talk about undocumented immigrants. Do you think it's a more recent phenomenon, or is it like more? Is it doesn't more belong to the Trump era? Would you say, or is it?
No, it's been all over. I think alien is actually used like officially, like the permanent resident card used to be called the like alien something card, like at like a federal level, like, okay, the alien is this person, like my like for like your official like number, like your number, they call it the A number. It's the alien number. It's your alien number. It's just like oh yeah, there, it's the alien. And it's dehumanizing in one way, because it's like it has a cultural, like the word alien has a cultural context of just being like sci-fi, like ooey gooey kind of weird, and like fear of the unknown. I think it just alien conjures up ideas of fear of the unknown, and then alien or illegal just like fully dehumanizes somebody, like to like just to that like act of like, that person being just fully like
I don't know. I mean, I think a part of it is kind of removing the human connotation from it, right? Because, like, if you say immigrant, if you say person, you say, worker, right? That all kind of implies human, right?
And
but
the
alien
laws that have alien in them were written in the 1700s. Like the Enemy Aliens Act was in 1798, if I remember correctly.
I don't think it's specifically referring to the sci-fi thing, but it is dehumanizing in the sense that I just mentioned, in the way that you say worker, you say whatever, immigrant, person, that all implies humanity. Alien does not in any way imply humanity. Yeah. So, do you have any hope pertaining to the situation, looking to the future?
It's hard to say right now. I think that there's so much layers to it also, because we're pretty much like going into like techno-feudalism as a global. There's like the AI and like control of whatever. So like dehumanization is just like happening. It's happening. Immigrants are already on the back end of it, but even with things like the Epstein files are like they're out and nobody's being prosecuted. I think they just arrested Prince Andrew. I don't know if you guys saw. The UK just arrested him. Only person on the Epstein files, I mean, except for like obviously Maxine. Or what's her name? Maxwell. What's her name? Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah. But I mean, she was taken to like a lower security prison and all that stuff. I just feel like I need to bring in that context of like, because you're asking me if there's hope. Right now, it's seeming really bleak because of all this shit going on.
The amount of Trumpies screaming about rape by non-straight and non-white people is stunning. It is completely stunning that there are so much presence in the Epstein files, and that's what they focus on.
I think there's quite a bit of projection going on. In any case, Carlos, thank you so much for your time. I know, I mean, I'm not just so it doesn't come off the wrong way. I'm not throwing you off. I really would like to talk to you more. You gave us a time frame, and we are well over that. And we're really grateful for you staying on as long as you did.
Yeah.
And with
Thank you.
that,
I appreciate
thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to us.
I appreciate you giving me a voice and being able to say my piece on all these things.
We really appreciate your perspective.
All right,
that being said,
thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for listening. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening. You appreciate what we do consider checking us out on Patreon, on PayPal. You can do a recurring or a one-time donation there on Patreon. You will occasionally get early access to special content, and 50% of all donation proceedings will go to helping refugees in need. So look into our pages if you're interested in doing that, and consider supporting us. Subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever you are active. Yeah. So, have a wonderful day. Have a good night. Goodbye. Take care.